Sputnik V COVID-19 vaccine is nearly 92% effective against the virus. Not only was it deemed safe by the Lancet, it also appears to offer complete protection against hospitalization and death.
But skepticism over Sputnik V remains, as well as other vaccines in general. A latest survey shows willingness to get vaccinated among Filipinos remains low at just 56%. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Robbie Alampa. You're watching The Big Story. Let's begin with Russia's vaccine candidate reporting a 91.6% efficacy. It's cheaper at just $10 a dose, and it only requires medical-grade freezers.
But the recent survey shows that most Filipinos have reservations in receiving Russia's jab. Greg Gregorio with The Big Story.
Russia's Sputnik V COVID-19 vaccine is 91.6% effective in Phase 3 trials. In its peer review of Sputnik V, science journal The Lancet saw no serious adverse effects from the vaccine. It only recorded flu-like illness, reaction in the injection area, headache, and asthenia or loss of strength.
It is one of only 3 vaccines with efficacy of more than 90%, while being very affordable, allowing for easy logistics as it can be stored at +2, +8 degrees, and based on a very safe and proven human adenoviral platform.
But even with its high efficacy rate, the Russian vaccine will undergo regulatory process like other candidates.
Magandang development, no? Hindi lang po para sa ating bansa, katulad ng sabi ko kanina, lahat po sa globally would benefit kung may mga ganitong bakuna with this kind of efficacy.
Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez says negotiations are already ongoing with Russia.
We are asking for some doses, pero yun po, sinasabi ko sa inyo na sa ngayon po na ongoing ang negotiation ay hindi po masasabi yung details po. Pero po, maganda po ito, welcome news.
The Food and Drug Administration says it is still evaluating Sputnik V. Russia earlier filed an emergency use authorization in the Philippines in January. FDA Director General Eric Domingo says they may release their assessment within the month.
Nakakadagdag lang kasi tayo ng confidence kasi alam natin, for example, pag na-publish siya sa Lancet, which is a peer-reviewed journal, na nabasa na rin ito ng mga ibang expert bago siya pinayagan na ma-publish.
But while another shot is close to getting approval, question is the public willing to get vaccinated? In a survey conducted by the University of Santo Tomas COVAX Vaccine Awareness Team, 82% of respondents have low confidence on vaccines coming from China. 61% are not also keen on Russia's shots. 75.3% prefer Western sources. As for willingness to get vaccinated, only 55.9% are certain, while 44.1% have second thoughts. The FDA appeals to the public to reserve judgment on vaccines based on country of origin.
Hindi din naman po yun ang mag-dictate kung gaano ka-effective or gaano ka-safe ang isang produkto, kundi kung paano siya na-develop.
In an interview with the chiefs, Dr. Benjamin Ko expresses fears that vaccines procured by government may go to waste.
You can imagine that once I bring that out and I have to administer it, and that will wear out in the next 6 hours.
Yes, right.
What will I do with the rest if the other people do not come in?
The DOH says they will ramp up efforts to boost vaccine confidence among the public. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
Inoculation in the Philippines is expected to start 2 to 3 days immediately after vaccines arrive. Vaccine Chief Carlito Galvez is requesting 900,000 doses more of Pfizer shots via the COVAX facility. Both houses of Congress have ratified the bicameral committee report on the Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentives for Enterprises Act. The measure is now up for the President's signature. Hundreds of Navotas residents rushed out of their homes after ammonia leaked from an ice plant. The facility is owned by Mayor Toby Chanco's mother. Vaccine Chief Carlito Galvez assures inoculation will begin within 2 to 3 days of vaccine arrival in the Philippines. In today's Laging Handa briefing, Galvez said COVID-19 referral hospitals in Metro Manila will be prioritized. He adds that medical frontliners and vulnerable people will be first in line. Expected to arrive first in the country this month are Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccines under the COVAX facility. Galvez says the government will request 900,000 more doses of Pfizer vaccines from COVAX. That pushes allocation to 1 million doses.
Hindi na po tayo magtatagal na kunyari gawin lang natin, inspekin lang natin na 2 to 3 days at ituturok po natin kaagad dyan. Uunahin po natin yung 4 na referral hospitals natin dito sa Metro Manila. Itong PGH, yung Philippine General Hospital, Lung Center, itong East Avenue, at saka yung Tala Hospital dito sa Caloocan City.
Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere also said a master list of individuals to be vaccinated and accredited vaccination sites may be out by February 15. And it's all systems go for the COVID-19 vaccination drive in several LGUs in Metro Manila. Quezon City, for one, expects to finish vaccination in 10 months. Jen Calimon gives us details.
Several local government units in Metro Manila are rolling up their sleeves for their planned vaccination programs. In Quezon City, Mayor Joy Belmonte says they have allotted 1 billion pesos to purchase 1.1 million vaccine doses from British Sweden firm AstraZeneca. The LGU is also in talks with Novavax and Johnson & Johnson for additional shots. QC is looking to inoculate 1.7 million out of 3.1 million residents to achieve herd immunity. They also plan to finish vaccination in 7 months by getting at least 10,500 residents injected per day. Non-residents who work in the city will also be inoculated.
What we're trying to do now is generate data from, let's say, universities, call centers, yung mga malls, parishes, and the rationale behind that issue is how can you achieve herd immunity kung yung mga residents mo lang ang babakunahan mo tapos yung kalahating hindi mo residente, hindi mo babakunahan, then nangahawa pa rin sila sa mga taga dito, di ba?
The city has identified 24 sites for the immunization program. Several churches and universities have offered to convert their facilities into vaccination sites. Over in Navotas City, 103,000 of more than 270,000 residents are expected to receive COVID-19 vaccines. The LGU has signed an agreement with AstraZeneca for 100,000 shots. The remaining doses will come from Moderna and Pfizer, depending on the national government's approval. Ultra-low temperature freezers and transport coolers have also been purchased for the 20 vaccination sites in the city. Mayor Toby Tiangco says the city had conducted dry runs to ensure a smooth vaccination process.
Kasi sa ibang bansa, ang daming bakuna, hindi naman na ma-roll out. Kaya doon sa Navotas, nagpapangalawang dry run na kami. Kasi yung practice kung papaano malilesen yung mga mistakes.
Meanwhile, both mayors have not received word from AstraZeneca regarding problems with supply. This after President Duterte accused the European Union of holding up vaccines to other countries. They also clarified that LGUs have the national government's blessing to procure their own vaccines.
We are not in a strong position to bargain. Ibig sabihin, kung ano lang yung maging available dyan, kailangan na natin bilhin kaagad. Kasi hindi lang naman tayo ang nangangailangan. At tingnan natin yung sitwasyon, nag-aagawan po talaga lahat.
They are also asking for cooperation from their respective residents in carrying out their immunization programs, as they cannot afford another severe lockdown. Reporting for News 5, Jen Calimon, We Are One News.
Time for an express look at some of the day's big stories. Former Senator Sonny Osmeña passed away yesterday at the age of 86. His sister Annie Osmeña Boitis confirmed his passing. Osmeña tested positive for COVID-19 last year but recovered in July. The former lawmaker is remembered as a Lone Ranger during his Senate days because of his advocacy against corruption. Regulators are considering a 3-strike rule for motorists entering toll gates with insufficient balance on their RFIDs. Motorists will be reminded to load up their RFID on their first offense. A repeat warrants a warning, and a 3rd strike will result in a violation ticket and a fine of 1,000 pesos. The Tourism Department confirms that 6 tourists entered Boracay with fake RT-PCR results. 3 of them tested positive for COVID-19. All 6 tourists have been arrested by the Malay police. DOT Boracay is now coordinating with health authorities in Malay for contact tracing and to monitor concerned tourists quarantined at the Aklan Training Center. Let's go for a quick break. When we come back, it may be faster and more convenient, but the Philippine Red Cross warns consult employers or travel destinations first before going through saliva testing. A measure which also seeks to lift taxes on COVID-19 vaccines has been ratified by both houses of Congress. The details next.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay. Saliva testing is deemed less intrusive compared to the regular swab test, but the Philippine Red Cross is warning that it needs to make it more convenient by setting up drive-through sites. How will that work? Jenny Dongon shows us.
It's just 9 in the morning, but cars already lined up outside this mall in Mandaluyong. They're not after sales. Instead, they're on queue for COVID-19 testing via the Philippine Red Cross drive-through saliva testing. Romel Cinco, a company driver, had his saliva test done within 5 minutes.
Mas madali ito. Sabi nila sa swab test daw medyo masakit, pero ito okay lang.
Booking is done through the website book.redcross1158.com. Those with confirmed schedule will be given a vial and a 1 milliliter barcoded specimen container. This is where the saliva will be deposited. Collection only takes 5 to 10 minutes. Results will be sent through text or email within 4 hours. What's more, it only cost 2,000 pesos. Philippine Red Cross Chairman and Senator Richard Gordon says the price may even be cut by half.
Kung marami magpapatest, gusto ko ibaba ang testing natin ito hanggang 1,000 kung kakayanin para halos linggo-linggo pwede magpatest ang tao.
On Tuesday, the PRC signed a partnership with SM Supermalls to open drive-through saliva collection sites. These testing centers at SM Malls in Mandaluyong and Pasay will be open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. daily. Gordon claims the test is considered by the World Health Organization as the gold standard in COVID-19 testing. It has a 98.11% accuracy rate. Gordon now pushes for PhilHealth to include saliva testing in members' benefits since it is cheaper.
Dapat masiya, maglulundag para mga unggoy, yung mga naandyan sa PhilHealth, dahil mura na ang test. Imbis na 3,400 ang babayaran nila, 2,000 na lang.
But it clarifies employers and travel destinations should be first consulted before availing the test.
Especially po yung mga agencies, yung mga OFW natin, ma'am, prepared pa rin na yung swab test kasi sila pa rin yung tinatanggap po sa ibang bansa na collection pa rin. Yung saliva kasi pang local pa rin po. Wala pa po. Depende pa po yun sa lugar kung saan po kayo pupunta. Sa airlines.
The health department says while the conduct of saliva testing has already been approved, they are still closely monitoring this new method.
Pero kailangan din po natin maintindihan na ang binigay po nating conditionalities dito po sa pag-aaproba nito is that we will monitor them strictly. For every 100 specimens that they will do, they will need to submit dito po sa our ITM so that we can be able to properly monitor.
The PRC targets to make saliva testing available in all of its molecular laboratories and 109 chapters nationwide. For News 5, Jenny Dongon, BR1 News.
A bridge without pillars? That's exactly how the Estrella Pantaleon Bridge is being constructed, and more short bridge projects are expected to follow suit. A look at the technology which makes it possible in this report by mobile journalist Teresa Urmatang.
Not even the pandemic can stop the completion of the Estrella Pantaleon Bridge. Expected to be finished by April. The structure will connect the cities of Makati and Mandaluyong. But unlike traditional bridges, this one does not need pillars for support. How is that possible? This is through a method called balanced cantilever method with traveling forms. So how does it work? Cement is poured from both sides of the bridge, covering 5 meters at a time. After a few days of drying, the process is repeated until both ends meet in the middle. The blue form travelers are used to support the construction from above the bridge. Authorities say this will help speed up the bridge's completion.
So yung work nasa bridgeway lang at hindi kailangan harangin yung ilog ng dati kasi kailangan mo maglagay muna ng barge. Pero ngayon dahil sa traveling forms, yung trabaho nasa taas.
This is only the third bridge in the country that used this construction method, and more in the short bridge projects in the pipeline are expected to use this very method.
This technology has been used in our other project, in Claridel Bypass, in BGC, at ito ay marami pang proyekto na gagawin dito.
In terms of yung strength, parehas lang, but in terms of the time, mas mabilis.
The Public Works Department expects the China-funded bridge to ease traffic along EDSA.
This was given as a grant from China at a cost of about estimated cost of about 1.4 billion pesos.
1.4 billion.
Yes. Pero at no cost to government. We're expecting tens of thousands of cars a day ang dadaan dito. Hindi na kailangan duman pa sa Guadalupe.
Teresa Urmatang, we are One News.
Let's take a look at the biggest stories on print and online. A priority bill that slashes taxes on local and foreign companies is now awaiting the president's signature. The Philippine Star reports that the House of Representatives and the Senate ratified the Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentives for Enterprises or CREATE bill. Of the measure's co-author, Representative Joey Salceda expects CREATE to generate up to 931 billion pesos in tax savings for businesses. It also seeks to lift taxes on COVID-19 vaccines. From Business World, the national government's outstanding debt has reached 9.8 billion pesos in 2020. The Treasury Bureau reports that last year's debt stock jumped by 26.7% from 2019's 7.73 trillion due to the pandemic. Debt to GDP ratio is now at 54.5%, the highest in over a decade. And the Commission on Elections bears problems surrounding the proposed hybrid elections in 2022. In an interview with Radyo 5, spokesman James Jimenez says hybrid elections are unprecedented and a year's worth of preparation may be too short. National Task Force Chief Implementer Carlito Galvez is now in talks with COMELEC for the possibility of doing away with face-to-face campaigns. Let's go for a quick break. When we return, 1 died and 60 more Navotas residents were rushed to hospitals after ammonia leaked from an ice plant facility. The details later.
Good evening, I'm Robbie Alampay. You're still watching The Big Story. Government is pushing ahead with plans to phase out plastic items such as straws and coffee stirrers. Manufacturers are warning of possible job losses should the ban proceed. Shaila Francisco explains.
Plastic soft drink straws and coffee stirrers may soon be phased out starting next year. They have been added to the list of non-environmentally acceptable products and packaging, or NEA. 11 agencies under the National Solid Waste Management Commission approved the move. The Environment Department wants the resolution ratified within a month. The guidelines will then be finalized before the ban takes effect a year after. For the DNR, this is a right step in addressing plastic pollution.
Hindi ho siya nabubulok, no? Even though it disintegrates sometimes, yes, but still turns into microplastics.
But before plastic straws and stirrers get banned, the DNR says alternatives should be available and should only be more expensive by 10% than the current price of straws and stirrers. Among alternatives pushed to replace plastic straws include paper, bamboo, and metal wands. Popsicle sticks and metal spoons can be used in place of coffee stirrers. Carinderia store owners are in favor of the move since only few use the said items anyway.
Okay lang po naman sa amin na walang straw kasi po nakakapagdagdag din po sa basura namin yung mga na yun.
But manufacturers warn most alternatives are imported and might lead to job losses. They plan to appeal the move to better reevaluate its scientific and economic impact.
Pinapatay natin local industry. Kasi ang plastic straw and plastic stirrers are being locally manufactured. While the bamboo, stainless, yung mga yun, imported pa yun eh. It cannot support kung magkaroon man ng demand, it cannot support the demand. So it will be imported. So it will be determined to the local jobs and local industry.
The DNR insists the phase-out is long overdue. The Solid Waste Management Act was enacted in the year 2000. Agencies were mandated to come up with a NEAP a year after, but it has only happened now. The DNR says it may reconsider the phase-out if manufacturers show a clear retrieval process with less impact to the environment.
Meron pa mga finishing touches yan to make sure na hindi rin tamaan yung industriya, no? Nitong mga if-phase out na ito. And at the same time, hindi maapektuhan yung ating pong mga mamamayan na gumagamit naman ito.
For Oceana Philippines, banning plastic straws and stirrers is not enough. They want 8 more items to be included in the list. The DNR says the inclusion of more items is forthcoming. For now, the DNR targets to close all open dump sites by March this year. As of now, there are 195 remaining dump sites in the country, down from 233 last year. Shaila Francisco, VR1 News.
A Navotas resident died. 61 were rushed to hospitals after an ammonia leak in an ice plant in Navotas. Hundreds of residents scrambled out of their homes after the toxic emission from TP Marcelo ice plant and cold storage. The plant is a family property of Navotas Mayor Toby Chanco. Chanco says the smell already faded. Earlier this afternoon, he urged residents to avoid North Boulevard and R10. He has also ordered the facility's temporary closure, and he vowed to implement laws without exemption.
Pinoy basketball wonderkid Kai Soto is back in the country to prepare for the FIBA Asia Cup qualifiers later this month with the Gilas team. The 7'3" hoops prodigy is already in quarantine. He hopes to secure a medical clearance after a negative swab test result in 5 days. Time is ticking, though, for the Gilas squad with just about 2 weeks to prepare. They face off with South Korea and Indonesia in the 4-day qualifiers in Doha, Qatar. The Gilas team is still upbeat, banking on Kai's adaptability on court.
Residents of Myanmar's biggest city, Yangon, bagged cooking pots and pans to protest the military coup that took over Aung San Suu Kyi's government. In a sign of public disquiet, residents repeatedly bashed cookware and sounded their car horns after dark. People have not taken to the streets so far as the country has a history of bloody repression of protests. Meanwhile, a New York resident just had a hog-killing time during a major snowstorm in the city. John Burke, also known as the Naked Cowboy, strolled the snow-covered Times Square in his signature briefs, hat, boots, and guitar. The Naked Cowboy howdied drivers with a muscle flex and serenades as heavy snow fell heavily around him. This is no joke. Up to 2 feet of snow were felt across the region.
I cannot imagine how cold that must have been.
Yesterday, it was dancing in the streets in Yangon in the middle of a coup. Tapos now, walking naked in the middle of a snowstorm.
All I can say is that I'm glad we're in the Philippines.
What we need now is some kind of calamity involving volleyball. And then I know you have my back.
Maybe we can have Kai Soto do something in the upcoming days.
Sige.
Let's see.
We'll have our
Let's see
reporters
about
work on that.
And that wraps up today's big story. My name is Gretchen Ho. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal, channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. I'm Robbie Alampay, and we are One News. Good evening.